The cut on screen right now, the finished product you see, earned us our first 1-star review in a decade of business. And what happened is the customer texts me saying he's going out of town. He needs his lawn cut. He's been cutting at 2.5 inches, and that's what he likes. And his mowers are horrible. They don't cut it. I'm putting the text messages on the screen. His mowers are horrible. They don't cut evenly, and he doesn't think his mower can handle it if it doesn't get cut before he makes it back from out of town. He also mentions his health is not in good shape. Now, this time of year, I don't normally cut lawns this low, but I've got these constraints, right? And I'm going to help the customer meet his goal of hopefully being able to mow his very thick Bermuda lawn with a push mower, which if you've ever mowed Bermuda with a push mower, you know it ain't easy. And if I had let it go taller, if I pulled the trick where the customer asked for a shorter cut and I didn't cut it shorter, his complaint would have been, well, he didn't take enough off, and now my lawn's too tall. I had to take too. You see how it goes, right? This is a non-winning situation. But I want to talk about some other lawns that I manage regularly, because this lawn, I don't know this guy from Adam, and it is what it is. It's whatever. I've met him in person once. I've done one other thing for him. So he's just really a random person who doesn't understand what he's got. But I wanted to show you some properties that I do manage and have managed for the entire year. And none of these are old lawns or old properties in terms of the Bermuda grass that is in them. All these lawns, we're pushing the Bermuda grass this year. And there's a lot of different situations. I'm going to show you a lawn that got eaten by armyworms last winter and had grub damage just about 3 weeks ago. I'm going to show you one lawn that I cut down to 2 inches back in July when it was 96 degrees out. I'm going to show you a portion of grass that I weed eat every single week. Weed eat it with a string trimmer, not a mower. And it is green and beautiful and lush, and guess what? Weed free. Look at that. Okay. Just to prove a point that mowing practices and consistency, the grass will conform to what you do if you do it long enough. And there's a lot of points to be made. And I'm going to show you pictures of this guy's lawn along the way that I did and why these are not problems. And yes, I did offer to immediately help the customer. I would have offered free lawn care, for X amount of time, fertilizer, whatever he thinks he would need to feel satisfied. I would have obliged. You want lawn care next year? You want me to help you take this thing over and help you get it looking real good? Let's talk. Let's get it going. I was gonna offer things, but he refused to pick up the phone, and instead of taking me up on my hearing my potential offers, he went straight to Google and then Facebook to, have a little cry session. But let's look at these lawns.
All right, so I chose to show this lawn, actually these lawns in particular. I mow them both because I actually had to cut this one a day later than the neighbors. They had company. I didn't want to be rude. I was trying to be courteous, so I came back the next day. And you're going to notice the neighboring lawn is much browner because when you cut a lawn in 90-degree heat, it is going to brown up. It's inevitable. It's almost impossible not to have it brown up for at least a day or two. So that's why I wanted to show these. But you can also see we were about 3 days late on this cut, and you're getting into that brown a little bit. And again, Bermuda grass has to be cut often. And when you're mowing them this high, you're just pushing that green portion up. And I want to show you a really slow motion close-up of the grass blade so you can see just how little green you have to work with. But for the most part, even though we're late, because I only used this one mower on this property, there's not a ton of dig in. The grass is kind of quote-unquote learned the mower, right? Now if I used a 60-inch on this, it would be a totally different story. You'd really notice a few little marks. And here comes your close-up slow motion, so you can see just how little right now you can see just how little green you have to work with. Okay? And that gets worse when you mow the grass taller. So for the grass to be this tall is not best for it, but for us to mow it shorter, you need to have irrigation. And that's why raising your mower height is one of the worst things you can do for Bermuda grass, because eventually all that's got to come down. I'll talk about that more later.
So those 2 yards I've been working on in terms of chemical treatments and proper mowing and everything all year long, all of 2026. And there's 2 different scenarios there. The one that I was blowing off in that video, it got weed prevention last October and it's gotten all of its treatments this season. The one on the right, the one not on the hill, I just started working on that one this season in March. And the thing about it is that the contractors only sodded a little small portion. I'm going to show you a picture now that shows the line. You can actually see where they stopped the sod. So most of that yard did not have sod in the front, and now it is a perfectly sodded, technically, but it's through fertilization and mowing practices, it is a full Bermuda turf lawn in the front there. They didn't spend a penny on a sod square to get that yard fixed. It's all been chemical. It's all been extremely affordable in terms of getting really nice grass. I'm showing you those pictures of what it looks like now in mid-May. That's where we had gotten, and we were in a drought. It hadn't rained at that point at all. So we had just pretty much got the weeds killed, and we're just waiting on some rain. And then the next picture I'm showing you is going to be in June or July. I can't remember. I'll probably do both. I'll label them. But you'll see the results once we get that rain. All of it filled in. Looks beautiful. Looks great. And it's all through, just proper practices and experience. But there's things that you should recognize, which is on that one lawn that I was blowing off up the hill, there's no scalping. There's no dig-ins on the wedge. There's no wedge cuts, is what I call it. And the reason for that is because I've always used that same exact mower on that lawn. If I were to take my 60-inch machine and mow that, you would start to see some scalping points until the grass adjusts to that mower. That's how that works. And there's a good example. That is a very steep hill that house is on, and there were no dig-in points. But if your lawn is not being mowed regularly, like the one that complained, like this one that I'm showing on screen now, and if you start to use another mower, which my mower is different than his push mower, you're going to see different high points because of a different size mower deck. It's going to hit and touch at different points. And unfortunately, we can't push mow a yard just because, especially not this time of year, 90-degree heat. I got 50 yards to cut every week, and then landscapes and fertilization and everything else on top of it, and a family. Like, there's no chance that we can just push mow everything. And I did push mow the back of his yard, which I'll show you a picture of that now. He didn't mention that in his posts, and that also corroborates when you use a different size mower, you're just going to see the high point. It's going to mark those high points in a different way until you mow enough and that grass grows in and adjusts to those cuts. Let's go look at a handful more of these Bermuda properties. They're city properties that I mow, and I just for educational purposes, I want to see how they're doing right now. Coming out of a light rain week, coming out of a 94-ish degree week. I cut all of these properties that we're about to see last Sunday, or last Monday, sorry, and today is Sunday, August the 23rd. On my phone, August 23rd. Let's go see the results on these massacres. All right, so here we are at a property. Hopefully you can hear me over the road. And This is one that we're working on transitioning to Bermuda grass. Now let's talk about this process. We're not using sod. We're not using seed. And there's a lot of reasons for that. First and foremost, sod, super expensive. $200, $300, $400 a pallet, depending on what variety you get. Seed, ridiculously expensive. A bag of a high quality hybrid Bermuda grass is $400. And to get that to germinate, this grass has to stay wet 30 days straight, minimum. There is no irrigation out here. So that super expensive seed would not work. Now, a lot of you folks are probably going to look at this and think, oh yeah, green grass, this actually looks really good. And it is green, but it is not fully Bermuda. Okay, a lot of this grass in here is a cool season mix. Fescues, ryegrasses, Kentucky blues. I've tried it all out here over the years, and it does look amazing. Here is this lawn in the peak. I'll show you a picture now. And typically this time of year, it is August the 21st, or whatever I showed you earlier, August, end of August. 99.999% of the time, this is all brown, as brown as this concrete, dead, because cool season grasses do not handle the Georgia heat very well. Now, to me, this does not look amazing. It looks fine. It's greener than it's ever been, but to me, I want it to look like that one over there. You see that super dark green and even? And now look at City Hall over here. You can maybe see the color difference here in the camera. City Hall, lime green. My property over here, dark green. All right, so one thing I did forget to mention is the reason that I don't just immediately come in here and kill everything except for the Bermuda is because it would leave bare spots on this entire property. Big ugly bare spots in the middle of the city for pretty much all year, probably multiple years, because it takes a lot of time to fill this thing in without spending a ton of money just constantly fertilizing and watering and all that, right? And keep in mind, these properties, none of the ones I'm showing you have irrigation, and these customers do not run water hoses, and they look as good as they look. Okay, so just keep that in mind as well. These are not irrigated lawns. So I have to work within those confines. As the business owner, I have to work within the confines of people want to see green all the time. So I can't just come in here and kill everything because there wasn't enough Bermuda until I think next year, when we'll finally pull that trigger in the summer and get rid of all this junk and try to really push this Bermuda to fill out here. All right, here we are across the streets. I don't know why the road's louder over here, but here's this one we've been working on all year to repair. Unfortunately, this one was hit with armyworm back in October of last year, and it was all eaten. I'll show you a picture of this lawn in April of this year. And then now here it is 4 months later. And you know what? It looks pretty darn good in my opinion. There are little patchy things where we've killed off weeds. You can see these little holes here. That's normal. It'll fill in over time. And of course, there are your tougher weeds like crabgrass coming in. Again, 90% of this was bare just a few months ago. And when you have bare spots, you're gonna have weeds. And that's just kind of what can happen when you run into issues randomly like armyworms. It actually had grubs in it 3 weeks ago, so we're coming back out of that because I treated for those. This one has been fighting every step of the way, but when you look at the color of the grass, it just looks great. And if you get down far enough into it, yeah, you're gonna find brown stems at the bottom. Okay, see the brown down in there? And that's why we don't want to cut at 2.5 inches in the summer with rotary mowers on non-irrigated turf. Now, the complainant customer, his turf was irrigated, so he can actually get away with cutting that short, which is why I went ahead and did it and followed his request, right? Because, you know, he was saying he couldn't do it. His mowers couldn't cut at these higher heights. This one gets maintained. at 3.25 every week. It looks just fine. And let's get it cut and take a look. And let me show you this grub damage here. These little tufts, that's from grubs, and I probably still have a few in there, but we'll have to treat for that later. But that's basically grub damage, and like I say, it's just coming out of that from like 3 weeks ago. And you can see the line there. Very frustrating. But again, there are ups and downs with this grass stuff. And then let's look at the City Hall property, and you can see the difference in color, right? And this City Hall property looks fantastic. They cut it every 2 weeks, but it does have a little bit of the brown up and stuff like that, and the color just, it is not that, okay? And now let's be fair, let's cut this and see what it looks like with a fresh cut.
All right, here we go, mowing this Bermuda lawn, and I want you to notice how much grass is flying here. There's a lot of material. We're not taking off the tops. We're not taking off the tips of the grass blade. Okay, we are mowing the lawn. If you're mowing Bermuda grass and you're not getting a little bit of discoloration, you're not taking off enough. I mean, obviously you don't want to take it down to the dirt every single time, but there is a point every so often with Bermuda grass where the green of the plant has moved up uniformly enough that the whole lawn will start to kind of discolor. It comes to a point where you have to take off just a hair more and get it back to your desired height. This is called a height of cut reset, and it's very much inevitable for Bermuda grass lawns. Whether you think you're doing it or not, at some point, if you have a Bermuda turf, this is gonna happen. These lawns that you're seeing, this is gonna happen to them. At a certain point, the grass visually looks like it's growing evenly, but it's not. But at a certain point, every grass blade gets to a point where the green has moved up so much that, yeah, now it's time for a high to cut reset. We got to push that stuff back down. It's going to brown out a lot. That's just an inevitability every month, 2 or 3 months, kind of just depends. Now you saw me readjust there, and that's because that little patch that I started on when I got to the side yard, it still has fescue in it, and it's just living in the shade. And because we've gotten a little bit of rain, it just looks good since it's in the shade. So I decided to leave right here this patch of fescue grass. Let me get back over to it. I decided to leave this patch of fescue grass because visually it still looked pretty good out by the road. Okay, so yeah, this right here it's still got some fescue in it. I didn't want to have a bunch of brown patches from killing stuff off to let the Bermuda run. I didn't want that here because it is shady. It's going to take the Bermuda in that spot a little bit longer, so I'm leaving that fescue kind of strategically so people driving by don't just see a bunch of brown dead. Which is, again, this is a different year. Typically that space does brown out this time of year because it's 90 degrees in a drought scenario. It's just a rainy August and we're still looking at fescue in this little patch, right? But again, I just kind of strategically left it next to the road because it is green and looks good driving by. This portion I'm driving on in the back, you don't see it very often unless you're in the back of the building. And those little bare patches in that section are for me spraying out, kind of like I said I was going to do at the flower shop. I talk about this more in the video, so I'm not going to repeat here in the voiceover, but yeah, there's just so many different scenarios, and I try not to do things in such a cookie cutter way because a cookie cutter plan does work, but a cookie cutter plan, meaning a set plan of 6 treatments for the year or a set plan of 8 treatments for the year, it's just not going to give you the same results across the board. You got to get a little creative sometimes. Now here, we're just going to weed eat this, and look at how dark green this is, and we do this every single week. And look how clean and steady. I mean, that's a smooth hand. And now I want you to look next to it at where the city mows. And listen, there's nothing wrong with this. That Bermuda right there where the city has stomped their mowers, it's going to be just fine. They do that every year, and it comes back every year. You know, and that's why you can do whatever you want to Bermuda. It is literally bulletproof. And check that out. Dark green, even, no browning. Oh, wow. Look at this crazy person weed eating my lawn. All right, so we're wrapping this one up, and you know, it still looks good. And you can see these little bare brown spots from where I've killed weeds. That is why I don't get so aggressive on weeds. I don't like seeing those, but I'm gonna be honest, I got a little frustrated and impatient because these damn weeds would not die. And that's the result of impatience. Big old brown holes that look bad. This is why I don't get so aggressive all the time.
All right, and there's our color directly after mowing. And it is almost the same. There's a little bit of brown up. And here's the deal, just like these other lawns, I expect this to brown up a hair Monday and Tuesday and then start flushing back out green. Because you have to remember what you're doing when you're mowing. You're mowing happy, healthy grass with a sharp blade. You're beating it to death to get it clean and cut and even. And I don't know how you'd look after that happened to you, but you should expect some browning up. You know what I mean? That's just going to happen. But you can see we retained a lot of color, and a lot of that is just attributed to the same mower with good mowing practices, you know, and all of the same stuff that I did on this other property. It's just that was the first time and only time that mower had been on those hills. So those dips and stuff, the grass hadn't sort of conformed to my mower yet. And to make that more apparent, you saw I weeded this portion of the grass with the trimmer. I didn't mow it, and here's where the city stops their mowing. Okay, and this was done with a weed eater, and you saw how dark green it was. I do that every single week. The grass will conform to what you do to it. This Bermuda grass will conform to whatever you do to it. Okay, it doesn't matter how short you cut it, just as long as you're consistent with those mowing practices. Yeah, looks pretty darn good. All right, and then this area and then the side yard, we've done what I'm talking about doing over at the flower shop, which is not killing grassy weeds until a certain point, until the Bermuda is thick enough to do so. 3 weeks ago on this area, I killed the grassy weeds because, as you can see, this Bermuda is thick. Now there's still weeds in here, crabgrass, right? Dallas grass, right? These weeds are difficult. They're very hard, and we can kill the Dallas grass, we can kill the crabgrass, but the risk of doing so at this point, all this green, all this nice thick grass will yellow out for about 2 or 3 weeks. It might green up if we get a really heavy rain, but are we going to get a heavy rain? Who knows? It's a risk. And is it worth it for your nice city property in the middle of town to have brown or yellow grass because you're really dialed in and going crazy over a weed? I don't think so, because this crabgrass will prevent it in the fall. We'll start in October. We'll do another application in February or January, and most of these weeds that you're seeing now will not be here. And that Bermuda that's finally in here will have all this space to run.
Okay. Now, why did I not do the crabgrass prevention last October or this January? Because 90% of this was weeds and crabgrass. 90%. If I had put the weed prevention product down, all of this would have been bare until about 3 weeks ago, when hopefully that Bermuda fills in. That would have been really ugly to look at. Weeds are ugly, okay, but it's not brown bare dirt. So again, there's purposes, there's intentionality, there's timing. Okay, the crabgrass will be gone, but just wait for it. Okay, it'll be gone. It's a process. This whole thing is a process. You don't get to that front lawn in 3 months. You know, it just doesn't happen. And things can happen. That lawn looks as good as it does. It could get armyworms again this October. I'm treating the heck out of it to try and prevent it. But anything could happen to get that stuff. It could get so cold that the roots freeze. There's freezing issues with Bermuda. Anything could happen. To get rid of that lawn, there's ups and there's downs. And part of that is waiting for this stuff to fill in so that when I go to kill the weeds, it's not so dramatic for so long. And that's what this spot is. There's almost no Bermuda in this area. Okay, I did not spray this out when I did the cool season spray or kill it out the grassy weeds over here, because look, it's shady. 100% of the time, the Bermuda grass is going to be so slow to fill in here. It will happen eventually, and there is some in there, but these shady areas are going to be, it's going to take a lot longer. So in the meantime, I've left the weeds, I've left the cool season grasses, because while it's not the prettiest, it's green and it does grow here in the shade. It's better than leaving it as bare dirt. Maybe we'll thin out this. In fact, I'll say I will thin out this side of this crepe myrtle, because that sun will shine right through and this area should thicken up next year. But we can see the same thing over here, what I'm talking about. All these bare spots, that's where your fescue was, because all of this strip was seeded in fescue and it just never did well. So what I did, I waited until the summer heat hit, the drought hit kind of again, and when it was already brown and ugly, I sprayed out that fescue. And now we're left with some nice thick Bermuda grass, which thrives when the fescue declines. Okay, now there's little patches and stuff where those weeds were. Next year, it'll look just as good as the front. I can almost guarantee it, just looking at it, because this already looks better than the start I had on that front. All right, so here we are at my last CR that I'm going to show for this teaching lesson. Another Bermuda property. And this one we got last year. I spent most of last year figuring out if the Bermuda grass would be viable, because it had been overseeded with fescue and there wasn't much Bermuda here. There was enough that I was like, maybe we can make it work. So I was very slow with the weed killing last year, just to see how much Bermuda would actually grow. Okay. And to see if overseeding with fescue would be worth it. And it wasn't, because last summer killed all of that fescue. Now there's a lot of problem areas, and there always will be, you know, these little patches. It's harder to get right because it's so hot next to these concrete areas, and then your weeds love the hot heat of the concrete, right? It just makes it a little bit harder. That's why when you come out here to these sidewalks, and you're gonna see this, that no matter what lawn you go to, these little easement, like, I don't know what they're called, these little patches are so difficult, because it's right next to the asphalt, it's right next to all the hot cars going by, it's right next to the sidewalk, and it's already 90, 95, 98 degrees, and then you put all the concrete and the metal cars and all that around it. Parking lot, people are gonna park their cars, it's gonna get hot next to them with the reflections. It's a challenge, right? Bermuda likes the heat. It doesn't like that kind of heat, right? But we figured it out and we went slow. And about 6 weeks ago, I finally sprayed out the last bit of the fescue that had been here since I started. And the reason I wait so long is because, again, I don't want brown patches. And here's some remnants of that. Okay. And this is an example where, you see that? That's where that fescue was. It's the last little patch to leave. But this is an example where, and then this is the last little patch too, because this was full of nut sedge and everything you could imagine. But it finally thickened up enough to kill off all of the weeds. But this is one of those exceptions where non-irrigated lawn, but about 3 weeks ago, I did cut it down to 2 inches. 2 inches I cut this down to about 3 weeks ago. And I'll tell you why. When I sprayed out that fescue 6 weeks ago, it had a lot of brown. Those little wispy, dead grass blades were in here, and it looked ugly. I didn't like it. I wanted a faster solution. So what I did, I waited for a rain to hit, and I cut it down to 2 inches. I got lucky, the rain hit, and this is what you got, 98% Bermuda grass. Today, I think, is the first cut at 3 1/4. So let's get this thing mowed up and, cover your eyes. This madman's gonna mow another lawn. All right, and so hopefully you can see here that sometimes the ugly is kind of worthwhile. I cut this one down. It was not pretty, but I did it again for a reason and strategically timed it with the rain and just happened to get lucky. Now here's the deal. Let's say that rain didn't come and it stayed 96 degrees. This might not look so good right now, okay? And now let's say next year in August we don't get any rain at all like we normally do. This lawn might not look amazing, okay? It's not going to be nearly as dead as a fescue lawn would, but that's just the ebbs and flows, okay? It is inevitable, not only with Bermuda grass but with everything. You know, there are bad landscape plant years, there are bad grass years, there are bad everything, trees, there are bad tree years. Like, it's all inevitable. And again, sometimes, like I've said many times this video, sometimes the ugly is actually beneficial. You don't actually want green constantly, but for customer sake, I do everything I can to maintain it. Right, and there we go. Madman strikes again. Can you believe I've done this, guys? Oh. There we go. That's the last lawn on the route for the day, and a direct example of why cutting that lawn a little bit shorter and leaving those spots, it's not quite as detrimental as this fella has made out. Which, again, it's just misunderstanding and not knowing, and it's just disheartening that my business, which is just me, by the way, and my family, has to take the brunt of someone not really understanding what they're looking at. And hopefully I've proven that, but let me get loaded up and we'll talk a little bit more.
All right, so hopefully you understand after seeing this stuff that everything is intentional and there is a thought process behind it related to what's best for the plant in terms of best practices and what's best for the business in terms of best practices. It's actually best practices to cut the grass short as long as you have irrigation to support it, which this person did. And it's best for business to accommodate this gentleman with poor health and horrible mowers that can't cut his lawn, and getting it shorter. It seemed best for business for me to cut it short like he had asked me to do. And make it easier for him to cut. But that didn't end up being the case. The grass will absolutely be fine. I have no worries. But the customer, I don't know. He may never recover.